Actually, there are 4 dust-ups, not 3. We've covered the first one. That's Vigum. Good luck to him. Second dust-up. The Star Tribune on Sunday had a big piece on light rail. And I read it. It was a task to read.
Yeah. I have to admit, I got halfway through it, threw it down.
How it's still just such a great thing for the city. And
Perceived crime. Words like perception.
Oh, so I just perceived seeing a woman smoke meth on it.
Even though they give examples of the crime and the people that have to ride it and are afraid to ride it because of what they see.
Well, here's the kerfuffle. I got a great note from Brent in Minneapolis. You may have noticed the above the fold headline and accompanying subheadline in Sunday Star Tribune: fears derail transit use and concerns about crime make it difficult to recover LRT passengers lost during pandemic. It's not fear and concern, but crime that is keeping people away from light rail. Why not the headline, crime derails transit use and crime makes it difficult to recover LRT passengers? The article begins by mentioning perceptions and narratives about it being unsafe to ride. If interested enough to go to the jump, however, you will find that reported crimes are up 29% from last year. Narcotics violations are up 150%, and drug equipment violations are up 359%.
Wow.
Nuisance behaviors such as people having sex in a nearby seat, rampant smoking and drug use, and filthy stations paint a picture of deplorable conditions that understandably make light rail an option only for those who absolutely need it. And that bar for needing keeps going up and up. Self-sustaining? Metro Transit police officers occasionally check fares, and if someone hasn't paid, they are asked to exit at the next station to buy a ticket with a pretty please, I suppose. Light rail is a mess. The Star Tribune attempts to sugarcoat a well-researched story that describes generalized awful conditions with misleading headlines and a soft leading narrative that leave the casual reader with the impression that conditions aren't all that bad. It's just perception and concern keeping riders away. Light rail is a boondoggle that far exceeds anything else ever seen in this state, yet we keep pouring our money into maintaining and operating what we now have, and of course building more routes that virtually no one will ride. We are taken aback with the amounts that the food fraud scandal doled out to greedy operators, but those amounts are dwarfed by the vast ongoing cost of light rail, and light rail won't go away anytime soon, if ever. We are poorly led. Keep pushing back. Brent, Florine, Minneapolis. It's been a boondoggle from day one.
Yep.
It's worse than I ever imagined it would be. Now, he notes something terribly interesting here. And I know it gets to be trite for me to call the Star Tribune a left-leaning newspaper, but there is a narrative that they adhere to, and it was very evident in this story. It was very whether the reporters were told or whether they do it instinctively, the language used, they required them to bend over backwards to try to bury the idea that crime is the problem.
Right.
Because crime is the problem casts a poor light on the very people that the Star Tribune, as a left-leaning organization, is attempting to champion.
Yeah.
And therefore, they can't really champion crime committers. So you have to come up with these flowery ways of writing that end up being somewhat disingenuous and deceitful. They're not safe. I wouldn't advise a mom and 2 kids ages 5 and 7 to ride light rail. I just wouldn't advise it for anybody.
You think that's a romantic spot to get it on, by the way?
Well,
that's the most uncomfortable place.
Well, sometimes it's an emergency situation.
Got it. Okay.
Things just
get
handled.
The St. Paul Pioneer Press, thanks to the greedy hedge fund bastards that own it, and
Allegedly.
own other. No, the hell with them. What are they going to do? Fire me? Go ahead, try it, pal. Yeah,
Oh,
effing fruitcake. We just don't have any people. The Star Tribune that got very fortunately purchased by Glenn Taylor, who has a vested interest in the state, and he did the Lord's work buying that newspaper. They have the people, but the stuff they deliver you is undoubtedly slanted. There just can be no question about it.
So they the Pioneer Press doesn't have a climate reporter like the Star Tribune does?
No, we don't.
Oh,
no. The Star Tribune has done good work on the food fraud scandal, but not enough work, and it was tardy. They should have done more, but I predicted at the beginning this will be a tough one for them because the very people they champion are behind the food fraud.
This LRT story, once again, they're doing what they always do: is they'll tell you the truth, like you ran up those stats, right?
Yeah.
But then they still try to tell you that the stats and the facts aren't reality.
Right. That's a perception. No, it's a stat. It's a number. You reported it to me. Quit telling me it's a perception.
And your letter writer, your email writer, used the word nuisance crimes.
Right.
And in the Star Tribune story, that word has quotes around it, Joe.
Really?
But there were so-called nuisance incidents: drug use, smoking, partying, erratic behavior, along with some filthy stations. And they go back and forth. It's okay. It's not a big deal. But then they give you examples, and you think, that's a pretty big deal. I've never seen that before in public, and it's happening right there on the light rail, huh?
Light rail was a mess from the beginning. I hold former Governor Ventura partly responsible.
But at least he had the right intentions.
No, he got out in front to get federal money, because if he didn't get that federal money, he believed it would go elsewhere.
Somebody else,
which is the truth.
Okay.
And he didn't want to see any money go elsewhere. He thought that money should come to Minnesota, and the freeways would be empty for him to drive without hassle. And so we get light rails. Obviously, not all Jesse's fault. He just took the federal money to get the ball rolling. But from the get-go, this was fated to be a disaster for a variety of reasons we pointed out 10 years ago. The way we developed here in the Midwest, Minneapolis and St. Paul, is we were spread out, which is why you now have this hectoring political class clamoring for sustainable urban density. You're trying to stop the cart, go find the horse and put it back in front of the cart. We aren't dense. They want us to be, because that would help justify the light rail. Mm-hmm. The light rail cannot be justified. We were never laid out in the way New York was, or even Chicago was, where public transportation makes sense, particularly transportation that requires tracks. Man. No, it'll never pay for itself. It's terribly costly.
How about that Southwest line?
It's just another layer of government that will be endlessly expensive.
You don't get it. That light rail train ride between Lake Street and Franklin, you look out those windows, it's like you're looking at Paris. It's absolutely magical.
Mm-hmm.
Let's play Europe is what they were doing.
Exactly.
Let's play Europe.
Serious question. When was the last time any one of you three were on it?
I was on, I can't, 10 years ago.
Because you guys know about my second to last
way
incident.
Pre-COVID.
And then the last time I was on it, I parked here, took my dad and my boys to the Gopher football game.
When?
11 o'clock kick last year.
All
right. I'm thinking after what happened, a couple of years ago.
That's a short run, Chris. That's just a few blocks.
It's a short run. It's got about 8 stops, because we got to pretend we're Europe.
If it had just been me and the boys, we would have walked. But my dad's got the bad knees and whatnot, so we hopped in the light rail. We were about a third of the car was full. Okay. Mm-hmm. I'm sitting down with my 2 boys. There is a guy in the back, 3 rows behind us, staring at all 4 of us, tweaking out of his mind. I know the look. I'm not stupid. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking, if this, moves, I got to spring into action. Because all he did was he was jittery and doing this the whole time. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking, are you kidding me? I can't even take my kids to a bleeping football game. 6 blocks from where I work.
Nope.
That guy probably didn't even see you. He was
Probably.
tweaking so hard.
Probably. What's that moving furnace over there? Yeah.
Pre-COVID, when we were down a car, I did take the light rail and then took the bus home.
Right.
This
You
was,
took it from here to St. Paul.
yeah, all the way down to St. Paul.
Yeah.
And I can virtually guarantee you, even leaving at 5 o'clock or 5:15, 5:30, where it was not full during rush hour. There were people on there, but it really was different experience, day after day hopping on there and then, getting on the bus, which was fine, but it was never full.
Matthew,
You knew people didn't buy tickets. Yes.
in this story, they keep bringing up over and over and over again smoking. Did you witness any smoking?
Yes.
Here's today's ray of hope. Yeah. I would be sitting in that car with those guys smoking. We're bringing back a better.
It's like it's the lunchroom.
Yeah. Well, the good thing about the smoking on board is it took away from the urine smell. So I preferred hanging out with those guys.
It's a good spin.
Yes,
it's a good spin.
Yeah.
Don't underestimate the impact this kind of writing and reporting has on the electorate.
Oh, no question. Absolutely no question.
The casual reader might not have gone to the jump to get the truth of the story. Because the front page was all perception.
But we have to keep liberal policy intact, Joe.
So
that's how we're moving forward, Minnesota.
It's the same kind of perception reality conundrum that they have with downtown Minneapolis. The fact that it's safe and everything's okay.
That's
and
our next one. I got that coming up.
Rebecca Brannon.
Yeah. I have that, and
okay, good, because that's exactly where I was going.
So we finished 2 of the dust-ups, Sphigum and Light Rail.
Okay.
I don't know what compelled that Star Tribune story about Light Rail.
They sat. Let me see the quote. I bypassed the quote. Over the past 2 months, a Star Tribune reporter and a photographer spent dozens of hours at light rail stations and on board the trains, interviewing passengers, transit workers, and police officers about their experiences, and that's all we can get from them, or that's all I saw.
Okay, and they might have had reasonably benign experiences,
right? Yeah, and that's where the nuisance, quote unquote, nuisance line comes in, and right also, after that paragraph.
What also was underreported in that story is the amount of harassment by female passengers on that. I know 2 women that were harassed simply because they were women and simply because they were leaving work and trying to get home.
I got news for you. If somebody's canning apricots 2 seats ahead of me,
oh my God,
that to me is more than a nuisance. It's an affront.
I'll say
it's an affront.
It is? That's to me. That's
you'd find that entertaining.
Can't even pay extra.
Yeah, get that on tape.
Even
get
be
her
better,
out.
right, Kenny? If it was in the smoking car,
get it out on social. Yep.
Oh, it's just dreadful. Just dreadful.